Let's have a look at how the two teams do line up. Squads came in over the past 24 hours and they have been finalised with their 17/18 and extra squad members for the Blues with no Latrell, no Turbo. Katoni Staggs, the Bronco, gets his debut. It's Jack Whiten who'll be in the centres, not Stephen Crichton, who'll debut off the bench. No Josh Addo-Carr. Daniel Tupou, the Rooster, returns to the scene. Ryan Madison, the Parramatta Eel, gets his go off the interchange as well. Nico Hines, the informed Shark, in the 18th man position. As for Queensland, 4 players on debut. Selwyn Cobbo, after 19 NRL games, he's there, the young Bronco. So too his teammate Patrick Carrigan on the bench. Ruben Cotter, as you saw there, the Cowboy, he's at lock. And his teammate Jeremiah Nanai comes off the bench for the Queensland side. Tommy Dearden, another Cowboy, he'll be 18th man. Ben Hunt, the starting hooker, ahead of Harry Grant from the Storm, who wears jumper number 14. Gus, when you see those two teams, what vibe are you getting about this series?
Well, first and foremost, if anyone tried to pick those two teams 2 months ago, no one would have got it right. You could have got $1 billion prize for getting both teams right, which is normally the way. A few surprises in both teams, but both very looking. Queensland in particular looks like a traditional Queensland side. Plenty of speed out wide, plenty of creativity where you need it, and a hard-working working man's pack. A group of blokes that will come in and tackle and hit it up and won't try to be stars in their own right, but just allow the star makers to do their job. Very interesting, this selection of Ruben Cotter. He reminds me a lot of Queensland forwards over the years. Dallas Johnson comes to mind. Small in stature, but big in heart, and just gets in there with a heap of work rate, and he's impressed with his club football. I think both coaches have they've picked the fans' teams. They've picked the players that have done well for their clubs. That's really important. Sometimes we go with incumbents or fellas that are not quite in good form, but there aren't any players in these two sides that aren't in really good form for their clubs.
Gal, initial reaction to both?
Yeah, I think it's as close Origin series I've seen on paper for a long, long time, many, many years. This is a 50-50 split for me. This one, obviously, I'm leaning towards the Blues on the back of like Tedesco and Cook, but two very, very good teams. And as Gus said about players in form, they're also all players from winning teams who are going very well in the competition. Queensland have not had that for a number of years now. They haven't had the Broncos in 4th position, the Cowboys in 3rd position. Obviously, got plenty of players from the Melbourne Storm there also. So Billy Slater's been able to pick players in good form from good teams that are doing well in the competition. That's something they have not been able to do for a couple of years. So, look, this is going to be probably one of the better series, I think. It's a very, very even series, and obviously I'm going for the Blues.
Gal, we'll hear from Freddie and Tedesco later on, but do you think Jake Trbojevic and Josh Addo-Carr were hard done by, or they had to make way?
Look, we've all got opinions on players we would have picked and teams we would have picked, and I would have had them in my side without a doubt. But I think the fact Addo-Carr's not there, I think they're looking for height. Obviously, you look at the two wingers for the Queensland side, they're tall in stature, they're very, very good under the high ball, and Tyrone Addo-Carr, not the biggest man in the world. So I think not having Addo-Carr there is okay. Jake Trbojevic, look, he's a player I would have had there, but he's not there. It's Freddie's bloke picking the team. He's the one who lives and dies by his decisions. So that's just the way it goes. And you heard Freddie say just then that his team has to evolve, and that's what he's doing. So I can't knock Freddie or knock the team they picked. I think it's a really good team. Daniel Tupou as well. You remember, Daniel Tupou has been in very, very good form. He's been a team going okay, and he's been a great winger for a number of years. He's been there before. He's also 6'3", 6'4", very good on the high ball himself. So I think that's going to allow attacking kicks to go to him, and also combat attacking kicks also. So I think it's a good selection.
And we'll ask Brad shortly too about what those phone calls would have been like, because we know how close he is, particularly to Jake Trbojevic. Have you spoken to Josh Addo-Carr, Gus, about his omission?
Yeah, briefly this morning. He took it pretty well, actually. I think he got a call from Brad and he understood what was happening. He's playing with a team down the bottom of the ladder. He hasn't had a great opportunity with the Bulldogs to score a lot of points or make a lot of breaks. He's been pretty heavily targeted by opposition teams because they know he's the one that they've got to contain. And, it just hasn't been the best of years for him. But, you take that gamble when you leave the Melbourne Storm and go to a team down the bottom of the ladder. And the Bulldogs are on a pretty long recovery mode at the moment. So it's not going to get any easier for him. But it's hard to argue with the players that Brad Fittler has picked. He knows you've got Josh Addo-Carr there for the later in the series. It's a 3-game series. I'm sure his experience will come into play at some stage.
Stephen Crichton on the bench, not a starting centre for his debut?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. He does cover all the outside back positions. He can cover centre, wing, on left and right side of the field, and he can cover full-back as well. My questions were who was going to cover the 9 if the 9 got injured early. He's got 2 options. Cameron Murray can fill in there if it happens early in the game. Perhaps later in the game, Jerome Luai can use there. That way that Crichton can move to centre and Whiten would move to 6 and play in the halves. when you're selecting 17 players for a game like this, and with HIA and injuries the way it goes, you've got to gamble somewhere. Last year they had Coruscant on the bench to cover purely just the 9 position. And if the 9's going well and he doesn't get injured, how do you get him into the game? And you waste another interchange on the bench. So generally you gamble around those halves positions and just figure that someone will fill in there during the course of the game and get it done for you. That's what New South Wales have done. Queensland have got the luxury of having Harry Grant on the bench, which can be used strategically, plus Ben Hunt can fill in the halves because that's where he plays in his club football. So they too have got it pretty well covered. I think Harry Grant gives Queensland a little advantage coming off the bench, strategically.
Gus, I want to ask you about Selwyn Cobbo. I remember last year you were critical of the selection of Reece Walsh, even though he didn't play in that game. Do you think there's similar thought process here with Selwyn Cobbo, or is this kid ready?
Well, number one, different positions. He's playing on the wing, not playing at fullback. Reece Walsh would have been under enormous pressure. Number two, I think Reece had only had a handful of games. At least he's played 19 or 20, this kid. He's obviously a player of the future. Personally, I think it's too early. But Queensland have done this with outside backs in the past, and they obviously have a huge opinion of him, and he's a strike player. You know, if he gets half the room, look at this here, just in
Gus,
and away of footwork.
What makes you think it's too early? When you've seen the way he's played, for me particularly when he comes out of the backfield, that's where he's been so damaging for me. He makes some 50, 60-metre brace coming out of the backfield. So what makes you think it's too early? Purely age?
He reads in defence. I think under pressure at a different level can be quite telling at different stages of the game. That's where he's going to be targeted. That's where he's going to be found out. Not so much worried about him in the air. Not so much worried about him bringing it back. He's not scared. He's a big boy. He's going to handle himself physically. But you know, the way these blokes play and the way they move the ball these days, and the speed at which they do it, and the accuracy of their passing, and you're playing against Tedesco's and these fellas, Jerome Luai's, that they are going to target him down that side of the field.
How big is the Billy Slater factor for Queensland?
Well, it's massive. It's already showed in the selection of his team. He's got tremendous Origin IQ. He's got tremendous Origin history and knowledge. And he's picked a really good, typical Queensland side. Speed out wide to take advantage of a group of playmakers that have been there before, and a hard-working forward pack that will not get in their way. This forward pack will not overplay its hand. They will tackle, they will hit the ball up, and they'll wait for Cherry Evans and Munster and Kalen Ponga to create opportunity for these very fast outside backs, be it through short kicking game, passing game, attacking from their own end of the field. I think Billy Slater has just picked a team in the real Queensland mould, the Queensland teams that he liked. I can often remember, even when he was playing and even shortly after they retired, he and Cooper Cronk and Jonathan Thurston, they would look at teams and you'd see them and they'd say, yeah, they've picked a working man's team, and that's what they like about Queensland. They like workers. They like people that'll get in there and do their job, and that allows the star makers to play their role. The playmakers get in there and do their stuff, and they've got plenty of speed out wide. Valentine Holmes, Gagai, these fellas are, they're real finishers. There's
nothing more crucial in terms of a bench than Origin time, having it right, Gal. For the Blues, Stephen Crichton, Liam Martin, Regan Campbell-Gillard, Ryan Madison. For Queensland, Harry Grant, Lindsay Collins, Patrick Carrigan, Jeremiah Nanai. Who's stronger?
Oh, look, I'm tipping the Blues, obviously. It would surprise me if we sort of changed the Queensland selection. I look at that bench and maybe not so much impact I think New South Wales may have. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw Tino move to the bench and see the first 15 to 20 minutes out of the game, then put him on the field. I think he can provide a hell of a lot of impact for the middle of the field if they were to go that way. But I agree with Gus. Harry Grant being able to cover that hooking role, particularly if Hunt gets tired, is a big plus for them. The Blues, on the other hand, would probably have to move someone like Cam Murray in there if something does happen to our hooker. But look, I'm sticking with the Blues, back in the Blues.
Yeah, what's the advantage of starting Ben Hunt over Harry Grant, if it stays that way?
What's the advantage of it? Well, that's Billy's decision. I really don't know. I don't know. But obviously, Ben Hunt has the ability to play in the halves and at hooker, so I would have thought it would naturally to play him in the number 14. But Harry Grant, a couple of years ago, we spoke about, he had a real good game coming off the bench. Was it 2021? Was it? I think.
Yeah.
He came off the bench and ripped the Blues to pieces. So they may be thinking back to that, thinking about the game he had then, and going that way.
I'm looking at the two benches. There's only one player that I'm waiting to see come into the action is Harry Grant. The others will just go in and blend into the action. You won't know who's on and who's off. They're all just going to go out and do the same stuff, work away. But Harry Grant is the one you've got your eye on. It's one of those walkers-on moments where, Harry's on. He's on the field. And it's... Look, he missed last week's Storm game with a groin injury. I know that Billy was talking about that here Sunday as to whether or not he'd even be available. So the fact they've picked him on the bench, maybe that's, he's got another 10 days recovery there and they want to inject him into the action. But he's the big strategic play off the benches. I don't see any strategy from the New South Wales bench. And other than Harry Grant, that's the strategic play that could play a big part in the result of this game.
Is Stephen Crichton there just in case? Like we've seen players sit on the bench for a long time in Origin. Is Stephen Crichton just there in case someone goes down?
Well, he's there because he's so versatile. As I said, he can play left and right side of the field, he can play wing or centre, and he can fill in at fullback if they need him. So he's got all their outside backs covered. Injury, concussion, and all those types of things. So that's nice comfort to know that you've got that there. The rest of it, they'll just rotate those forwards through the middle and hope that everyone else can play the 80 minutes. I'm not expecting Crichton to get huge minutes given the way they've picked the team. It will only be injury that really brings him into play.
Anyone got an issue with Payne Haas with his situation going on at the moment? Any worries about how he'll perform?
No, I think
distraction in camp?
No, it'd be good for him to get out of the situation, whatever he's doing in Brisbane. And look, Payne Haas, whatever decision's going up there in Brisbane, he's got to live with it. But and live with the consequences of the way he's being treated up there. But I've got no issue with him being in the side. He deserves to be in this side. He's probably the game's premier front row at the moment, and I think he's going to do the Blues proud and do himself proud.
Get in that bubble ahead of...
Get in the bubble and just worry about the Blues, mate. That's all you got to worry about.